The night air hung heavy with an unnatural stillness. Rayon lay in bed, eyes tracing the patterns of shadow and light across his ceiling, his mind restless despite the late hour. He wasn't sure when it had begun, this feeling, this presence, but it had slowly taken root, creeping into the edges of his awareness like an unseen whisper. It started subtly. Some nights he would wake up shivering despite his blankets being perfectly in place. Other nights he would find his window slightly open, though he swore he had locked it before bed. Objects on his nightstand shifted by inches, his glass of water sometimes missing and then reappearing in strange places. Small things, things easy to dismiss, but together they gnawed at the edges of his reality. At first, he convinced himself it was nothing, sleep paralysis, stress, maybe a trick of the mind. But then came the dreams, vivid, immersive dreams that left him breathless. Dreams of soft whispers against his skin, of delicate fingers tracing invisible patterns on his arms. A weight beside, him in bed, warm and unmistakably real. And a face, glowing silver eyes, lips that lingered near his, a presence both unfamiliar and achingly intimate. Tonight felt different. The air in his room buzzed with a strange, low energy, like a silent hum in his bones. He shifted, pulling the blanket higher over his chest, trying to shake the unease pressing against his ribs. Maybe he was just imagining things. Maybe he had spent too many nights thinking about it, making it real in his mind. But then, something changed. The faintest breath of air moved over his skin, not from the window, but from behind him. His body stiffened, his breath caught in his throat. The room was dark but not empty. He felt it before he saw it, a shadow shifting in the periphery of his vision, his fingers clenched around the sheets. He told himself not to turn around, that it was nothing, that it had to be nothing. But the weight of presence was undeniable. Slowly, carefully he turned. The figure stood at the foot of his bed, tall, slender, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. Not human. That much was certain. Rion's breath stuttered. His pulse thundered in his ears. The woman, if she could be called that, watched him with a stillness that felt almost unnatural. Her skin had a soft luminescence, faint and shifting, as though her very existence wavered between the material and the unseen. He wanted to move. He couldn't. Her eyes, large, impossibly deep, held him in place, not with force, but with something far more powerful, an unspoken pull, an undeniable magnetism. She stepped forward. Rion's fingers twitched against the sheets. Every nerve in his body screamed for understanding. Was he dreaming? Was this real? Then she raised a hand. Her fingertips hovered just above his face, inches away, hesitant yet deliberate. He felt the warmth radiating from her, a heat that wasn't human, something softer, more intimate than touch itself. The moment her fingers brushed his cheek, a sensation bloomed inside him, a warmth that wasn't physical but crawled into his very being. It was familiar, terrifying, exhilarating. She exhaled softly, and though she had not spoken a word, he felt it. Recognition. She knew him. Rion's throat was dry. He tried to speak, to say anything, to demand answers, but all that left his lips was a single breathless whisper. "Who are you?" The woman said nothing, but her fingers slid lower, tracing the line of his jaw with an agonizing slowness, and then, so softly he barely felt it, she leaned in. Her lips hovered over his, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath, a phantom kiss before it had even begun. His body tensed, torn between the instinct to pull away and the inexplicable yearning to let her come closer. The air buzzed between them. Time itself felt fragile, stretched impossibly thin. Then, with a whisper of motion, her lips finally touched. His, A soft pressure, hesitant, like a question waiting to be answered. The moment lasted forever, and yet it was gone too soon. Rion barely had time to process the sensation before a strange weightlessness overtook him. A feeling like slipping between waking and dreaming, reality folding in on itself. His eyes fluttered, darkness rushed in, and the world disappeared. A sharp gasp tore from Rion's throat as he jolted upright. His chest heaved, lungs dragging in air as if he had been drowning moments before. The room around him was still cloaked in darkness, the only light coming from the pale moon filtering through the half-open window. His skin was damp with sweat. His fingers clenched so tightly around the sheets that his knuckles ached. For a moment, he sat motionless, trying to piece together what had just happened. The dream, was it a dream, lingered at the edges of his mind, too vivid, too visceral to be dismissed as mere imagination. The touch on his skin, the warmth of her lips, the way her presence had filled the space around him. It had felt real. His fingers, hesitantly lifted to his lips, tracing where hers had been just moments before. Hadn't they? His pulse was still racing, a deep, thrumming rhythm that refused to slow. His body still hummed with the strange, electric sensation he had felt in. Her presence, like his very being, had been altered in some unexplainable way. Nothing about this felt like an ordinary dream, a sound, soft, barely audible, a shift in the air behind him. Rion's breath stilled. The hairs on his arms rose as the sensation returned, not just of being watched, but of someone being here. He turned his head slowly, afraid of what he might see. She was there. Not a dream, not a figment of his imagination. Real. The woman stood at the edge of his bed, silent, unmoving, her glowing silver eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. Her features were delicate yet otherworldly, her skin shimmering faintly in the moonlight, as if it reflected light in a way that was not entirely natural. Elora. The name suddenly bloomed in his mind, unspoken but undeniably hers. He didn't know how he knew it. Perhaps she had whispered it to him in that strange in-between moment before he woke. Or maybe something deeper, something beyond words, had already tethered them together. She didn't speak. She only watched. Him, head slightly tilted, her gaze unreadable. Rion swallowed, his throat dry. He should have been afraid. Shouldn't he? A strange woman, an alien no less, appearing in his room at night, touching him, kissing him. Nothing about this should have felt safe, and yet it did. "Who are you?" he finally whispered, his voice hoarse. Elira blinked slowly, the movement too precise, too deliberate, as if she was carefully considering how to respond. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first, only the faintest hint of breath, a hesitation, before she finally spoke. "You know me," she murmured, her voice soft, almost melodic. "Not human." Rion's fingers gripped the edge of his blanket. He did know her. Somehow, impossibly, he did. "This isn't real," he whispered, shaking his head. "You're not real." Elira stepped forward. Rion tensed, his body instinctively, wanting to retreat. But he didn't move. He couldn't. Her fingertips grazed the side of his face, just like before, a touch so light it barely felt like contact at all, but he felt it everywhere. "If this is not real," she said softly, "then why does it feel like home?" His breath hitched, her hand moved lower, tracing the line of his jaw, then the curve of his neck. It was a strange touch, not demanding, not forceful, but seeking, as if she needed to convince herself that he was real, just as much as he needed to convince himself that she wasn't. "I don't understand," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. Elira's silver eyes searched his, and for the first time he saw something flicker behind them, something fragile, something lonely. I have been with you, she said slowly, as if every word was a delicate thread she had to weave carefully. Every night, watching, waiting. Her fingers splayed over his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. But tonight, you saw me. Rion swallowed hard. His pulse was a thunderous rhythm beneath her touch. She had been here before. Not just tonight, not just the past. Few weeks, but longer. How? He asked. Illyra hesitated, as if she wasn't sure how to answer. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she lifted his hand trembling slightly from everything he was feeling, and pressed his palm to her chest. Rion sucked in a sharp breath. Because beneath his touch, beneath the strange, smooth texture of her skin, he felt it. A heartbeat that matched his own perfectly. His world tilted. His mind reeled. This isn't possible. Illyra only watched him, her lips parting slightly, her expression unreadable, yet achingly familiar. I don't know what I am to you, she admitted, but I know what you are to me. Rion didn't dare ask, because he already knew the answer. Something more. She leaned in again just as she had before, her presence overwhelming, intoxicating, inevitable, and this time, Rion didn't pull away. The air between them grew heavy, charged with something beyond comprehension. Rion's mind fought to make sense of it all, but his body, his instincts, had already decided. He didn't pull away as Illyra leaned in closer. He didn't retreat as her breath warmed his skin, her presence enveloping him like a tide he had no choice but to surrender to. He should have been afraid. He wasn't. Illyra's silver eyes searched his face, looking for something. Permission, understanding, a connection already known but never spoken aloud. Her fingers traced slow, deliberate patterns down his chest, feather-light touches that sent a shiver coursing through him. Rion inhaled sharply, his breath unsteady. "Why are you here?" he whispered, though he already knew the answer. Illyra's lips parted, her expression unreadable yet achingly tender. "Because I belong. Here." The words shouldn't have made sense, but they did. His heart pounded beneath her palm, its rhythm still perfectly synchronized with hers. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The logical part of his mind screamed for explanation, demanded to know how and why, but another part of him, deeper and more primal, already understood. They had always been connected. Illyra tilted her head slightly, studying him, her gaze filled with an emotion he couldn't name. Then, with slow, deliberate care, she pressed her forehead to his. The moment their skin touched, something shifted. It was as if a door had been thrown open inside his mind, a rush of sensations flooding through him, not memories, not thoughts, but something more intimate, a knowing. He felt the cold vastness of space, the weight of solitude stretching across years, her solitude. He felt the pull that had led her here, to him, the certainty that had guided her through the unknown. And beneath it all, he felt something deeper, something warmer than the void she had left behind. Longing. Not just hers. His, too. Rion's breath shuddered as the connection settled into place, as if something inside him had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it. The edges of reality blurred. The world outside this room, outside this bed, felt like a distant memory. All that existed was her. Illyra's fingers curled gently around the back of his neck, her touch both reassuring and questioning. "You feel it," she whispered. Rion exhaled shakily. "I do." Her lips barely brushed his, a whisper of contact, a question, an answer. It was softer this time, slower. Not rushed, not hesitant, but deliberate. Like she had all the time in the universe to learn the shape of his mouth, the way he breathed her in. Rion's fingers found her waist, unsure at first, then firmer as his body accepted what his mind still struggled to comprehend. She was warm. Beneath his hands, her skin smooth yet marked with subtle ridges and faint luminescent patterns that pulsed ever so slightly beneath his touch. Illyra shivered, her breath catching. Rion pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "You!" But before he could finish, her fingers pressed to his lips. A silent understanding passed between them. She was as overwhelmed by this as he was. She had come here night after night, drawn by something neither of them could name, lingering in the shadows, watching, waiting. And tonight, something had changed. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she whispered. Rion's chest tightened. The words struck something deep inside him, something raw. "Neither do I," he admitted. Illyra closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing his words, as if memorizing them. Then, when she looked at him again, her expression softened. She understood. Slowly, she shifted, drawing herself closer, pressing against him in a way that felt both unfamiliar and completely natural. Her body fit against his, as though it had been shaped for this moment, for him. Rion's fingers traced the line of her spine, feeling the subtle shift of her muscles beneath his touch. Illyra exhaled softly, tilting her head to the crook of his neck, her breath warm against his skin. She wasn't human. But somehow, she felt more real than anything he had ever known. They stayed like that for what felt like forever. Bodies pressed. Together, heartbeats still impossibly synchronized. And for the first time in his life, Rion didn't feel alone. The night stretched on, the silence between them no longer hollow, no longer weighed down by the unspoken questions that had once filled the space. Illyra's presence had changed something, not just in the room, but within him. The air felt different now, thicker, charged, alive in a way that made Rion's skin hum with an awareness he had never experienced before. He didn't know what she was to him, what she had been before tonight, but he knew what she was now. She was his, and somehow, impossibly, he was hers. Illyra's breathing was soft against his neck, a steady rhythm that mirrored his own. She wasn't just lying beside him, she was with him, her body pressed close, her fingers lightly tracing patterns along his arm, as if memorizing the feel of him. Her skin, impossibly smooth yet textured in a way he couldn't describe, glowed, faintly under the dim moonlight. Every breath she took sent warmth through his chest. Each movement she made sent an unexplainable pull deep into his bones. He should have been questioning this. He wasn't. The logical part of his mind, the one that demanded explanations, that screamed this wasn't possible, had gone quiet. Instead, something deeper, something older, had taken hold. "Does this frighten you?" Illyra's voice was barely above a whisper, yet it sent a ripple through him. Rion swallowed. No, it was the truth. A strange, unexpected truth, but truth nonetheless. Illyra's fingers moved, sliding up to his collarbone, her touch searching. "You accept this," she murmured. Not a question, a statement. Rion hesitated. Did he? He had never once imagined anything like this. He had never even believed in life beyond Earth, not in any tangible way. And yet here she was, impossibly real, undeniably present, woven into him like she had always been meant to be here. "I don't understand it," he admitted. Illyra's hand stilled against his chest. "Neither do I." That surprised him. He had assumed she had all the answers, that she had come here knowing what this was, what it meant. But there was hesitation in her voice, a vulnerability he hadn't expected. He turned slightly, his gaze locking onto hers in the dim light. "Then why do you keep coming back?" Elira's expression shifted, something raw flickering across her features. "I was drawn to you," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "At first I did not know why. I only knew that when I was near you, the emptiness inside me lessened." Rion's chest tightened. "You were lonely." Elira's lips pressed together in something that wasn't quite a smile but held the sadness of one. Yes. He understood that, more than he wanted to admit. Loneliness was an ache that seeped into the soul, one that dulled everything else until the world felt like a faded, distant thing. It was a shadow that followed you, whispering that you would always be alone. Until suddenly, you weren't. Rion exhaled slowly. "I think I was waiting for you." Elira's breath hitched. The silence stretched, thick with something neither of them could name. Her fingers, which had been resting against his chest, moved slightly, tracing the rapid rhythm of his heart. His pulse was unsteady now. Not from fear, but from something else entirely. Elira shifted, pressing closer, her body molding against his as if drawn by the same force that had brought her here night after night. Rion's arm instinctively wrapped around her, anchoring her to him, needing to feel her, to prove she was real. "I don't want this to stop," Elira whispered against his skin. Rion's eyes closed for a brief moment, the weight of those words settling deep within him. Neither did he. Elira pulled back just enough to look at him again, her silver eyes gleaming, searching. "Can I stay?" Rion didn't hesitate. "Yes." Elira released a slow breath, as if she had been waiting for those words, as if she had needed his permission to exist here. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a small, fleeting expression, but something deep, something real, something that belonged to him now. And in that moment, Rion knew. She wasn't going anywhere. Neither was he. The quiet between them was no longer uncertain. It was full, charged with something neither of them could explain, yet neither of them wanted to break. Elira rested against him, her body warm, her breathing steady, as if she had finally found the place she was meant to be, and Rion, he let her. It should have felt strange, but it didn't. Elira's fingers brushed against his chest, her touch delicate, exploring, like she was memorizing the feel of him. There was something so deliberate in the way she touched him, not just curiosity, but understanding. "This," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "This is different." Rion swallowed, his throat tight. "Different how?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, her fingers drifted upward, tracing the curve of his jaw, the edge of his lips. Her skin was impossibly soft, yet there was a strange strength beneath it, something not entirely human. But that didn't change the way he felt. That didn't stop the way his body reacted to her touch. Elira's lips parted slightly, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the moon, filtering through his window. "You're kind. You experience connection in a way we do not." Rion frowned slightly. "You mean emotions?" She tilted her head. "Not as you know them. We understand logic, purpose, unity. But not this." Her fingers pressed lightly against his heartbeat. "Not this pull." Rion exhaled slowly, aware of how close she was, how her presence seemed to wrap around him like an unseen force. "Then why do you feel it?" Elira's eyes softened. "Because of you." Something deep inside Rion tightened at her words. There was no hesitation in her voice, no uncertainty. She meant it. Elira had come to him night after night, drawn by something she could not explain. And now, as she lay beside him, their heartbeats aligned, their bodies attuned to one another's every breath, she had chosen to stay. She was no longer just watching from the darkness. She was here, with him. Rian reached up, fingers hesitating, just before touching her cheek. But Elira didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a brief moment. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips, impossibly smooth, alien and yet familiar all at once. Elira's breath caught. Rian barely had time to register what was happening before she moved. She kissed him, not uncertain this time, not hesitant, but slow, deliberate, like a discovery. Like she was learning the shape of him. Elira's lips were softer than he expected, her warmth seeping into him, her touch igniting something deep in his core. There was no urgency, no rush, only the quiet, undeniable truth that this was meant to happen, that she was meant to be here. Her fingers curled gently around his wrist, anchoring herself to him, as if she needed the contact just as much as he did. Rian exhaled against her lips, his mind spinning. He didn't understand this. He didn't know what it meant, what it would become. But right now, none of that mattered. Elira pulled back just slightly, her breath warm against his skin. "This," she whispered, eyes searching his. "This is what it means to be human, isn't it?" Rian swallowed hard, his chest tight. "Yeah," he murmured. "Something like that." Elira's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. Then she kissed him again. Rian wasn't sure how long they stayed like that, pressed close, caught in the quiet pull between them, lost in something neither of them could define. Time blurred, the night stretching endlessly, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. Elira's presence was everywhere. Her touch lingered on his skin, her warmth seeped into him, her breath mingled with his own, and still, she stayed, her silver eyes heavy-lidded, watching him in that way that made his pulse quicken. She had kissed him, twice, and each time it had felt like something inside him had shifted, realigned, settled into place in a way that was utterly irreversible. Rian exhaled slowly, his fingers still resting against Elira's waist, unsure if he was holding her there or if she was holding him. "You are thinking too much." Her voice was soft, but there was something amused in it. Rian blinked, startled from his thoughts. "What?" Elira tilted her head, her lips curling slightly. "Your thoughts are loud. It is distracting." Rian huffed a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "You can hear my thoughts now?" No. She shifted closer until there was nothing between them but breath and warmth and the lingering taste of the night. "But I can feel them." That sent a shiver through him. Her fingers traced his jaw again, slow and deliberate. She was fascinated. By touch, by the way skin met skin, by the way something as simple as a breath could change the weight of a moment. Rian swallowed hard. "Elira." Her name felt different now. He had spoken it before, but never like this. Never with this much wrapped around it. Elira's gaze softened, her fingers pausing over his lips. "Do you regret it?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Regret? How could he? He had never felt more certain of anything. "No," he said, voice steady. "I don't." Elira studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly, as if she had expected that answer but had needed to hear it anyway. She shifted then, her body curving into his, pressing against him like she belonged there. Rian stiffened slightly, not because he wanted her to move away, but because the sensation of her, the weight of her warmth against his chest, the way her breath fanned across his collarbone, was overwhelming in a way he had never experienced before. "You are warm," Elira murmured against his skin. Rian released a shaky breath. "You keep saying that." Her fingers slid against his chest, mapping the rise and fall of his breathing. "Because it is true." Your body runs hotter than mine. It is pleasant. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, focusing on her, on the way she felt against him, on the soft sound of her breathing. Why me? The words slipped out before he could stop them. Elira stilled. Her fingers stopped moving, her breath hitched just slightly, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she lifted her head, meeting his gaze fully. I do not know, she admitted. I only know that the first time I saw you, something inside me changed. Rion's throat tightened. She had watched him for so long. She had come to his room night after night, not speaking, not touching, just existing in the same space, drawn by something neither of them could name, and now here she was, in his arms, kissing him like he was something she had been searching for her entire life. His fingers tightened slightly against her back, needing to anchor himself. Elira's lips parted, her expression softening. You do not ask me to leave, Rion exhaled. I don't want you to. Elira's gaze flickered, something unreadable passing through her silver eyes. Then, slowly, carefully, she rested her forehead against his. Her fingers still curled lightly against his chest. I will stay, she whispered. And just like that, the space between them disappeared. The night stretched on, but neither of them moved. Elira stayed pressed against him, her warmth settling into his skin, into his breath, into something deeper that Rion didn't quite have words for. She wasn't just close, she was there, fully and undeniably, like she had never belonged anywhere else but beside him. And Rion, he let himself accept it, let himself want it. Elira shifted. Slightly, her fingers tracing slow, delicate lines along his arm, her touch impossibly light, yet intentional. She had always been fascinated by touch, by sensation. But this wasn't just curiosity. It was memorization. She was learning him, and something about that made Rion's pulse quicken. Your heart is racing again, Elira murmured against his skin. Rion swallowed, unable to stop the small huff of amusement that left him. Yeah, that happens when someone's close. She tilted her head, silver eyes flickering with thought. I have read about this. He arched a brow. You've read about heartbeats? No, she said simply. I have read about the way humans respond to longing. Something inside. Rion tightened. Elira's fingers brushed against his jaw, lingering at the corner of his lips, her eyes never leaving his. Is that what this is? His breath hitched slightly. What do you think? Elira exhaled softly, her lips curving, in the faintest of smiles. I think you wish to kiss me again. Rion let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. You sound way too confident about that. Her gaze darkened just slightly, silver depths narrowing in playful challenge. Am I wrong? Rion didn't answer. He didn't need to. The air between them was already heavy with something undeniable, something that wrapped around them like gravity itself, pulling them closer, closer. Elira's breath mingled with his. And then, she closed the distance. Her lips met his, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the way their bodies fit together, as if confirming that this wasn't a mistake, that this was real. Rion exhaled into her, his fingers sliding gently along her waist, holding her there. Elira made a soft sound against his lips, something like a sigh, something that sent a sharp jolt of heat through him. She had been cautious before, curious. But this was acceptance. She kissed him like she had chosen him, like she had always been meant to. Rion tightened his hold on her, deepening the kiss just slightly, letting himself sink into her, into the feeling of her warmth, the softness of her, breath against his skin, the way she fit against him like she had never belonged anywhere else. Her fingers slid into his hair, her touch gentle, exploring. She was still learning, still discovering, and Rion found himself helplessly lost in the way she touched him, carefully, deliberately, like he was something precious. Elira pulled back just slightly, her lips still brushing against his. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. "I like this," she whispered. Rion let out a breathless laugh. "Yeah?" She hummed softly, tilting her head. "It makes me feel connected." His heart tightened at that. Connected. She had said before that her kind did not experience connection the way humans did, that they understood unity, purpose, but not this pull. And yet, she felt it now, with him. Rion reached up, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face, his fingers lingering just slightly against her cheek. "I don't think I can go back," Elira admitted quietly. Rion's breath stilled. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, something flickering behind her gaze. Then, softly, "I do not wish to be without this." Rion's chest tightened. There was something raw in the way she said it, something so genuine that it nearly stole the breath from his lungs. She had spent so long observing him, watching from a distance, trying to understand what made humans feel. But now, she wasn't watching anymore. She was feeling it herself, and she was choosing to stay. Rion swallowed hard, his fingers curling, gently around hers. "Then don't," he said quietly. Elira's lips parted slightly. Her breath trembled just the slightest bit. Then, slowly, she smiled. Elira's smile was unlike anything Rion had ever seen before. It wasn't just a curve of her lips, wasn't just an expression. It was warmth. It was certainty. It was the kind of emotion that made something deep inside him settle, like he had been waiting for this moment his entire life without even knowing it. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. The way she looked at him, soft, unguarded, real, was enough. Rion squeezed her fingers gently. "Then stay," he murmured, "if you want to." Elira's silver eyes flickered, a quiet glow pulsing beneath them, like stardust caught in motion. "I want to," she whispered. And that was it. That was everything. Elira shifted closer, pressing against him, letting her body mold into his warmth like she belonged there. Rion wrapped his arms around her instinctively, holding her close, breathing her in, accepting this. This was no longer something strange or fleeting. It was no longer a question of what was real and what wasn't. She was here, and she had chosen him. For the first time in nights, Rion didn't feel the need to question it. He didn't feel the need to analyze or second-guess or wonder if this was something impossible. It didn't matter. All that mattered was this moment. Elira let out a quiet hum of contentment, her head resting against his chest. Her fingers traced slow patterns along his arm, absent-mindedly, like she was memorizing the shape of him. "Humans, they form bonds unlike any I have ever known," she murmured. "It is unpredictable, illogical." Rion chuckled. "Not everything needs to be logical." Elira tilted her head, considering that. "Perhaps not." She fell silent for a moment, her breathing steady, then softer. "But it is beautiful." Rion stilled. The way she said it, so genuine, so certain, made his chest tighten. Elira shifted, pulling back just enough to meet his gaze. "I never understood before," she admitted, "why your kind forms these connections, why they seek each other, hold each other, choose each other." Her fingers ghosted over his jaw, her touch impossibly gentle. "But now," a slow breath. "Now I do." Rion swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in his bones. Do you regret it? He asked softly. Illyra shook her head. No, she murmured. I do not. She leaned in again, pressing a kiss to his lips, slow, lingering, full of quiet certainty. Rion melted into it, his fingers tangling gently in her silver hair, holding her there. She wasn't leaving. She wasn't disappearing with the dawn. She was staying. And for the first time in nights, Rion felt something settle deep in his chest. Something right. Something whole. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in warmth, in quiet touches, in the unspoken understanding that this was the beginning of something real. Illyra was no longer just a visitor in the night. She was no longer just a mystery waiting to disappear. She was his, and he was hers. No matter what came next, they would face it together. And for Rion, that was enough.